Hi everyone! Today I'd like to share with you 8 tips to prepare for your medical school interview, and also common questions I was asked at more than one interview. My first tip is to research which type of interview you will be having. There are 4 common types of interviews, the first being the individual interview, which consists of just one candidate and one interviewer. One school that I interviewed at had us rotate between 3 different rooms with one interviewer in each room. The second type of interview you could have is a panel interview. This consists of between 1 and 4 interviewers per candidate. Most of my schools had 2 interviewers. The third type of interview is called the group interview. This is where you are interviewed alongside other candidates in the same room. And finally, the MMI interview involves rotating between different interview stations with a scenario. There are actors or actresses, and you are expected to take on some role and show how you would handle this situation. The MMI is trying to assess how you would interact with patients as a physician someday. The schools that I interviewed at with the MMI format also paired this with a panel interview. So we only had 2 stations and then a panel interview after that. If the school doesn't explicitly say which type of interview you will be having, it's okay to ask. My second tip is to research the school you are going to interview at. Find out what their mission and their values are. Find out about their curriculum, what type of teaching style they use. Are they more traditional or do they use problem-based learning? Look into things like if they have multidisciplinary learning, rotation abroad programs, their clubs and student organizations, current research going on at the school, and basically find out anything unique and special about this program that you are interested in. My third tip is to find example interview question sets. The main point here is to get a wide variety of questions so that you can be prepared for any question that is thrown at you. I would highly recommend looking into ethical questions as well as questions related to current events. I would imagine some of the questions could be revolved around delivering care in a limited resource setting, and also because it is an election year, potentially questions around Medicare for All and the pros and cons of that. A wonderful resource I would recommend for this is a book called The Premed Playbook Guide to the Medical School Interview by Dr. Ryan Gray. This book has hundreds of questions that could be asked at the medical school interview, and I personally experienced a number of them being asked. Here are some common questions I was asked. Tell me about yourself. What is your greatest strength? What is your greatest weakness? What book are you currently reading? Why do you want to go to this school? Why do you want to become a physician? Why do you want to be a DO? What will you do if you are not accepted into medical school this year? How do you manage your time and relieve stress? Some questions that caught me off guard were, tell me about a time where you acted unprofessionally, and what other schools have invited you for interviews? My fourth tip is to practice. I would recommend practicing interview questions with a friend or a family member. Even consider practicing in front of the mirror. Because there is a chance interviews could be online this year, I would recommend trying to interview over Zoom or FaceTime with someone. This way you can get a feel for what it's like to interview online. If you have access to a pre-med department, I would highly suggest trying to do a mock interview. When formulating your responses, try to conform them to the AAMC core competencies. These competencies revolve around things such as service orientation or being others focused, as well as teamwork skills, cultural competence, and many other examples like that. This is how medical schools are analyzing you. They're using these core competencies to evaluate you. So look up the core competencies and try to choose examples in your life that would demonstrate those core competencies in your answers. Another tip is to make your answers as specific to this school as possible. Putting in a little bit of extra effort in your answers really comes across well and shows the school how interested you are in going to their school. What I did is I wrote down answers to every single question, and that way when I went to review the question again, I could see what I wrote the first time versus the second time and to see which answer I preferred. And that helped me to come up with the best answers possible for me. Of course, practice getting caught off guard with new questions, answering as many questions as possible so you don't get caught off guard. And finally, get used to talking about yourself. It's really awkward, but it gets easier over time with practice. My fifth tip is to practice for the MMI. If you have access to a pre-med department to do a mock MMI interview, that would of course be best. But if you don't have access to that, you can practice with others around you. For instance, what I did is I had my husband read the scenario and then I would act the scene out together with him. Afterwards, he provided input on how I could improve. If you have anyone in your life who would be willing to do this, it can be extremely valuable. If not, what I would recommend is act them out with inanimate objects or record yourself in how you would respond. My sixth tip is to prepare thoughtful questions for your interviewers, faculty, and students for your interview day. The schools want to know that you're very interested in their program, so try to come up with questions that make them think and questions that are unique and different. They'll likely be answering the same questions all day long, so if you ask a really thought-provoking question, that might help you stand out and also gain more insight into their program. Tip number 7 is to review your primary and secondary applications the night before you interview. You will be asked questions from these applications, so it's wise to refresh yourself on all of your pre-med accomplishments. My 8th tip is before or after your interview, make sure to write down the names of your interviewers. This way you can send them a thank you email for taking time out of their busy schedule to interview you. I hope this video can be helpful during such a stressful time. I know you're going to do great, and please let me know if you have any additional questions in the comment section below. And as always, thank you for watching.